The morning I was meant to die was colder than any winter I could remember. Frost had claimed every stone of the courtyard, silvering the ground beneath my bare feet. The wind bit into my skin, carrying with it the murmurs of the gathered crowd, voices low and hungry, waiting to see the condemned Omega finally silenced. Chains rattled at my wrists as the guards dragged me forward. Their armor clinked with each step, iron meeting iron. I didn't resist. Resistance had long been beaten out of me, along with the belief that justice existed for creatures like me. The Alpha King's banner, black and crimson, hung heavy over the courtyard. Wolves embroidered in gold thread seemed to snarl down at me as though mocking my weakness. At the far end, seated upon a raised stone dais, was the man who had decreed my death. The Alpha King. They said his eyes were carved from obsidian, sharp enough to cut through lies. I'd never been close enough to see them until now. Even from across the courtyard, I could feel the weight of his stare, cold, absolute, unmoved. "Bring her forward," his voice commanded, deep and unshaken. The guards obeyed instantly. My knees scraped the frost as I was forced to kneel. My breath fogged the air in shallow bursts. I lifted my head just enough to meet his gaze, not out of defiance, but because I refused to let the world remember me bowed. There was no pity in his eyes, only calculation. Around him stood the elders of the court, wrapped in heavy cloaks. Their whispers were a hiss of satisfaction. "Traitor's blood," one muttered. "She betrayed the pack," another hissed. I wanted to scream that I hadn't, that the Alpha's council had lied. But lies, once spoken by those with power, become truth faster than innocence can be proven. I was the lowest-born Omega in a pack that had no mercy for weakness. The Alpha King rose. His movement alone silenced the crowd. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his armor glinting with the pale light of dawn. His wolf insignia gleamed silver on his chestplate. Power emanated from him, not wild but restrained like a beast chained behind calm eyes. "State your name," he said. My voice came out hoarse. "Arden," I whispered. "Daughter of no one." A faint ripple went through the crowd. They wanted tears. Please. Something to make their hatred feel justified. Gave them none. The Alpha's expression didn't change. "You stand accused of consorting with rogues," he said, "and of betraying your pack to the enemy. Do you deny it?" "I do." My voice cracked, but I forced it out. "I never betrayed anyone. The rogues attacked our borders. I warned your scouts before they came." He stepped down from the dais, slow and deliberate. The sound of his boots against the stone echoed like a drumbeat. "You warned them," he repeated quietly, almost to himself. "And yet, every scout who survived swore your scent was found at the rogues' camp." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Someone planted it. You know scents can be carried." "Enough." The single word carried more finality than any blade could. It fell silent. Around us, the crowd exhaled like a living beast. "By law," he continued, "you are sentenced to death by fire. The execution will be carried out at first light." First light. The sun was barely cresting the horizon. That meant now. 2 guards stepped forward, holding the torches. My chest tightened, breath catching as I stared at the flames dancing in their hands. Fire was sacred to our kind. It burned away impurity, leaving nothing but ashes and memory. For a moment, I thought I felt my mother's voice whisper through the wind, the echo of a lullaby I barely remembered. "The flame knows truth," she used to say. "And truth cannot burn." Maybe she was wrong. The guards forced me upright. My wrists were chained behind me, my hair matted and tangled from the cell. I didn't fight them when they dragged me toward the pyre. My body trembled, but my mind felt strangely clear. Every eye was on me. The condemned girl. The nameless Omega. I thought of the forest where I used to run as a child, before the wars, before the hierarchy crushed everything soft within me. I thought of the moon and how I had prayed under it once, asking for purpose. Maybe this was it. Maybe my death was the purpose. The pyre loomed tall, built from dry timber and rope, smelling of smoke and resignation. They bound me to the stake. I could hear my heartbeat louder than the murmurs of the crowd. One of the elders stepped forward, his voice booming. By decree of the Alpha King, this traitor shall be cleansed by flame. May the goddess witness this purification. He turned to the Alpha, awaiting his nod. The king gave it slowly. My lungs froze. The torches were raised. The heat licked the air. And then, sound. A low growl. Not human. Not wolf. Something older. The flames flickered, sputtered, and died. Gasps spread through the courtyard. The guards stepped back. Even the king's head turned sharply, his dark eyes narrowing. The elder stammered. It's the wind, my lord. No, the king said softly. It's something else. I didn't understand what had happened until I felt it, the searing pain crawling up my neck like molten fire under the skin. I screamed, jerking against the ropes as light erupted across my throat. A symbol, burning through flesh and blood, took form at the base of my neck. The crowd fell silent. The king's expression changed. For the first time his eyes widened, not in anger but disbelief. He took a step closer. Another. Until he stood before me, the glow of the mark reflecting in his pupils. Impossible, he whispered. That mark hasn't been seen in a century. My body trembled. What does it mean? He didn't answer immediately. His gaze was fixed on the shape burned into my flesh, an ancient sigil, the crescent wolf surrounded by thorns. Around us, the elders began to mutter prayers. One of them dropped to his knees. Another made the sign of protection. The Alpha's voice dropped to a growl. Unbind her. My lord, she's a traitor. Unbind her. The command cracked through the air like thunder. The guards hesitated, then obeyed. The ropes fell away, leaving my wrists raw and trembling. I stumbled forward, clutching my throat, feeling the pulse of something foreign, something alive beneath my skin. The king's eyes locked onto mine. Who are you? My voice shook. I told you. Arden. He shook his head. No, not anymore. He turned to the elders. Fetch the seer. Now. The courtyard erupted into chaos. Guards ran. The crowd fell to hushed whispers. The pyre crackled softly, smoke curling into the pale morning sky. I stood there, unbound but not free, shivering as the Alpha King stared at me like a man seeing a ghost. Whatever that mark was, it had changed everything. Moments ago I was the condemned Omega. Now I was something else, something the Alpha feared. And as the cold wind howled through the courtyard, I realized with terrible clarity. Sometimes fate spares you not because you are innocent, but because your punishment hasn't yet begun. The hours after the execution that never happened were a blur of steel and whispers. They dragged me back into the castle, not to the dungeons this time, but to a chamber I had never seen. Its walls were carved from dark stone, its windows narrow and high. Guards stood like statues by the door, and the Alpha King's presence filled the space before he even entered. I sat on the floor, wrists raw from the ropes. My skin still burned where the mark had appeared. The pain came in waves, followed by a strange pulse beneath my throat, steady, ancient, alive. I could still hear the crowd outside, the confusion spreading like fire. A condemned Omega had survived the pyre. When the door opened, the Alpha King stepped in without his crown, his armor dulled by ash. His gaze was heavy, unreadable. For a moment he simply watched me. You should be dead, he said at last. I lifted my chin. You made sure of that. He crossed the room until he stood inches from me. I could feel the cold of his shadow. But you aren't. His eyes fell to my neck. That mark, where did it come from? I hesitated. I don't know. It just burned through my skin. He leaned closer, voice low. Lies will not save you, girl. You wear the crest of the first wolf. That symbol hasn't appeared since the founding of this pack. No Omega could bear it. His disbelief cut deeper than his accusation. I wanted to scream that I didn't choose this, that I didn't even know what it meant. But he wouldn't have listened, not yet. Before I could answer, an elder entered, robes trailing like fog. The seer. Her eyes were white as bone, her hair silver as frost. She bowed to the Alpha and then turned toward me. "Show me," she whispered. I hesitated, but the king nodded once. I brushed my hair aside, revealing the faintly glowing sigil on my neck. The seer inhaled sharply, her hand trembling. "By the goddess, it's true." "What does it mean?" the king demanded. The seer's lips parted, her voice trembling. "It means she carries the blood of the ancient line, the first line. The ones bound to the moon by blood and sacrifice. The mark of consequence." The king frowned. "That's impossible. That bloodline was extinguished generations ago." The seer's gaze drifted toward me. "Apparently not." I felt my heart hammer in my chest. "I don't understand any of this." "You will," the seer said. "But the truth is not gentle, child." She turned to the king. "If the mark has awakened, then the prophecy stirs with it. And if that is so, your kingdom stands on the edge of its reckoning." Her words hung heavy in the air. The king's jaw tightened. "Leave us," he told her. When she was gone, silence pressed between us like a blade. Finally he said, "Tell me everything. Start from the beginning." I drew in a slow breath. "You wouldn't believe me. Try me." So I did. I grew up beyond the eastern woods, near the old ruins that everyone avoided. My mother used to tell me that the moon shone differently there. Brighter, colder, almost sentient. She said our blood carried a calling, but she never explained what she meant. She died when I was 7. Fever, they said. But I knew it wasn't sickness. The night she died, the moon turned red, and the forest howled with something more than grief. After that, I was taken in by the lower pack. They treated me like a stray, fed me when they remembered, beat me when they didn't. Still I worked, hunted. I tried to prove that I belonged. Then came the attack. The rogues descended on our borders like smoke. They slaughtered everything in their path. I ran for the scouts, tried to warn them, but by the time I reached the outpost, it was already too late. The smell of blood and fire filled the air. I found the Alpha's banner torn, and next to it, one of our scouts, barely alive. He clutched my arm, whispered one word before dying. "Run." I didn't. I stayed. When the patrol found me hours later, I was surrounded by bodies, both pack and rogue. My hands were covered in blood that wasn't all theirs. They didn't ask what happened. They didn't care that I'd saved the last surviving child hiding beneath a fallen cart. All they saw was an omega drenched in red. By nightfall the rumor had spread. The council declared me a traitor. They said I had led the rogues to our gates. They said my scent was found at their camp. No one questioned it. Not even him. I looked up at the king now, anger clawing through my exhaustion. "You sentenced me without even hearing me speak." His gaze hardened. "You were found at the scene of slaughter. What was I meant to think? That maybe your justice should include listening," I said bitterly. For the first time, something flickered behind his eyes. Uncertainty or maybe shame. It vanished just as quickly. He turned away. "I don't have the luxury of mercy." "Then what now?" I asked quietly. "You can't kill me, can you? Not with this mark." His silence was answer enough. I watched his shoulders stiffen, the weight of command pressing into every movement. "The mark ties you to something older than this crown," he said finally. "But I don't yet know if it's salvation or curse." He walked toward the window, where light broke through the narrow slit of stone. "Until I find out, you will remain here. Guarded." "Prisoner, you mean?" "Alive," he corrected. When he left, the door locked behind him, and I was alone with the mark pulsing beneath my skin. Each beat felt like a whisper from something far beyond me, a reminder that death had reached for me and failed. Days passed. The castle was a labyrinth of secrets. The guards avoided my eyes, muttering prayers when they passed my door. Sometimes I caught glimpses of the king in the courtyard, sparring with his men, commanding with that same iron voice. But when his gaze flicked toward the tower window where I sat, he looked away too quickly. He was afraid of me, or of what I represented. The seer came once more, bringing a bowl of herbs that smelled of ash and moonlight. She pressed her palm to my neck, her voice trembling with old words I couldn't understand. When she finished, she said, "The mark binds to your heart. Each beat strengthens it. You cannot hide from what you are becoming." "I don't want to become anything," I whispered. "I just want to live." Her smile was sad. "That choice was taken from you long ago." She turned to leave but paused in the doorway. "When the moon turns red again, the truth will demand its price." I didn't sleep that night. I watched the moon through the small window, silver and still, and wondered what kind of truth was worth so much blood. A week after my failed execution, the king summoned me again. The guards led me to the throne hall this time, vast, echoing, lined with torches that painted gold over stone. He stood before the throne, not sitting, his cloak heavy around his shoulders. "Arden," he said, the first time he'd used my name without contempt. "Do you remember anything unusual before your arrest?" I hesitated. "Unusual? Anything. Dreams, visions, strangers. Anything that might explain why the mark chose you." I thought of the night before the attack. How I had woken from a dream of a burning forest and a wolf made of light, its voice whispering my name. But I couldn't tell him that. It sounded mad even to me. "No," I said quietly. He studied me for a long moment, as if trying to read the truth from my heartbeat. Then he nodded to the guards. "Take her back." As they led me away, I heard him say under his breath, "The prophecy wasn't supposed to begin like this." I didn't know what prophecy he meant, but I knew one thing. Whatever destiny had marked me for, it wasn't mercy. Because in this kingdom, fate was just another kind of execution. The fire from the torches burned lower that night, their smoke coiling like restless spirits beneath the vaulted ceiling. I could still feel the bite of iron shackles on my wrists, even though they'd been removed hours ago. My skin remembered everything, the cold, the weight, the judgment. When the guards dragged me from the courtyard into the king's hall, I thought I was being led to my death again. But instead of execution, they placed me before a throne carved of obsidian and bone. He sat there, the Alpha King. Every legend I'd heard about him had failed to capture the truth. His presence filled the hall like thunder, heavy and unspoken. His armor was dark steel, etched with silver runes that glowed faintly beneath the torchlight. And his eyes were the color of winter before the snow falls. Gray, sharp, impossible to read. He had been silent since the mark on my neck had stopped his command earlier that morning. The same hand that once lifted to signal my death now rested motionless on his knee, as though frozen between duty and disbelief. Behind him, the council whispered. I heard my name spoken like a curse, like an echo that refused to die. "She cannot be one of the marked. That bloodline was purged generations ago. It's impossible, my king." The king's gaze didn't move. His voice, when it came, was low, measured, and dangerous. "Bring the elder seer." A chill spread through the chamber. Even the guards avoided meeting each other's eyes. The seer had not been called in years. She was the last of the old pack mystics, blind, bent with age, and feared for what she could unearth from the threads of fate. When she entered, the air shifted. Her steps were slow but sure. She stopped before me, raising a trembling hand that smelled of smoke and herbs, and traced her fingers just above my neck, above the place where the mark glowed faintly beneath my skin. "So it returns," she whispered. "The bond written before time. The seal of the twin flame." The king's eyes darkened. "Explain." The seer's voice trembled. "The girl bears the ancient sign, the mark of the Luna who once defied the moon goddess. She is cursed to rise when the blood of the first Alpha stains the ground again." The hall erupted. Growls, murmurs, gasps. The council members turned on one another, arguing, denying, accusing. Blasphemy! This is witchcraft. She should be burned. I stood frozen, my pulse roaring in my ears. The king raised a single hand, and silence fell instantly. Enough! He rose from the throne, each step echoing as he descended toward me. His shadow swallowed the light. You bear the mark that halted my command, he said quietly. You defied death by divine interference. Why? His question wasn't one I could answer. My lips parted, but no words came. My throat felt raw, the air thick with fear. I don't know, I managed to whisper. I didn't ask for this. He studied me for a long time, then spoke. Not to me, but to the hall. If she is truly marked by the moon goddess, killing her may break the balance between our kind and the divine. The elder seer bowed her head. And sparing her may fulfill a prophecy darker still. His jaw tightened. What prophecy? Her cloudy eyes lifted toward him. That the king who spares the marked one shall be bound to her by blood, until one of them dies by the other's hand. The hall went silent again. Utterly, completely silent. Even the torches seemed to hesitate before flickering. My breath caught. I looked up at him expecting fury. But instead I saw something else. A flicker of conflict, deep and buried beneath his stern expression. Take her to the East Tower, he ordered finally. She is not to be touched. The guards obeyed, though confusion twisted their faces. As they led me away, I felt his gaze burning against my back. It was not the gaze of a man who saw a prisoner. It was something far worse. Someone who saw a reflection of his own curse staring back at him. The East Tower was nothing like the dungeons. It smelled of dust and time, its narrow windows letting in pale ribbons of moonlight. I was left there alone, the door locked behind me. I pressed my forehead to the cold stone wall and tried to breathe, but the air itself seemed thick with meaning I couldn't understand. Below, the courtyard echoed faintly with the clang of armor and distant howls from the forest. Every sound carried memory. And in that silence I heard his voice again, soft, restrained, but powerful enough to haunt me. Why did the mark appear now? And why on her? Hours passed. I didn't sleep. The moon crept higher, silver and pitiless. When the door opened again, it wasn't the guards who entered. It was him. He stepped inside without armor, wearing only a dark tunic and a look that made the air feel smaller. His presence filled the tower like gravity. You have my mark, he said quietly. Froze. What? He lifted his sleeve. Across his forearm, faint but glowing, was the same sigil, the crescent and chain entwined. It appeared the same moment yours did, he said. Tell me what you've done. I've done nothing, said trembling. You ordered my death. I was ready to die. For a moment, anger flashed in his eyes. Then something else. Doubt, fear, recognition. He turned away, running a hand through his hair. The goddess toys with us, he muttered. If this is fate, then I am already damned. Then kill me, I whispered. End it now before it becomes worse. He looked at me, and for the first time I saw pain behind his authority. You think it would be that simple? He took a step closer. The space between us shrank until I could see the faint scar on his jaw, the rise and fall of his breath. You bear my curse, girl, he said. Our fates are entwined now. If you die, I die. If I kill you, he paused, his voice cracking for a fraction of a second. If I kill you, I destroy myself. The room spun. My legs gave out and I dropped to my knees. The mark on my neck pulsed like a heartbeat, as if it could hear him. Why me? I whispered. What have I done to deserve this? He didn't answer. He only looked out the window at the moon above the towers. Because, he said finally, you are the consequence of what I tried to erase. That night, he left without another word. But his shadow lingered, stretching across the floor like something alive. And for the first time since my capture, I realized something terrifying. My execution had been halted not out of mercy, but out of destiny. The next morning came without sunrise. Clouds lay thick over the citadel, swallowing the dawn. Bells tolled once, heavy and uncertain, as if even the sky hesitated to begin another day. From the tower window I watched the courtyard below fill with movement, soldiers changing watch, servants scattering ashes, priests burning sage near the gates. The castle looked the same, yet everything inside it had shifted. The king's command had spared me, but not freed me. It had only bound us both inside a riddle whispered by the goddess herself. Footsteps approached. The door opened without a knock. The Alpha King entered, clad again in armor, his dark cloak brushing the stones. Behind him trailed the elder seer and two of the high counselors. The seer carried a silver basin wrapped in wolf hide. The others bore scrolls sealed with red wax. "Stand," he said. I obeyed. My knees trembled, though I hid it. The seer placed the basin on the floor between us. Steam rose from it, black water shimmering with streaks of light. The scent was sharp, iron, salt, and something ancient. "This is the binding water," she murmured. "When two marks appear in one age, the moon demands they seal the bond in blood. Refusal breaks the balance. Acceptance changes the line of kings forever." The king's jaw flexed. "And if we refuse, your kingdom falls to shadow before the next full moon." Her words echoed against the chamber walls. The king's gaze turned to me, steady and unreadable. "Do you believe this, girl?" "I don't know what I believe anymore," I answered. "But I've seen enough death to fear prophecy less than men." Something flickered behind his eyes. Approval or pain, I couldn't tell. He removed one gauntlet and drew a dagger from his belt. Its blade was carved from obsidian, edge black as night. He turned it in his hand, testing the light. "Then we begin." The seer nodded. "You must each offer one drop to the basin. Speak the vow as the water takes your blood. The oath cannot be undone." He sliced his palm first. The blood fell dark against the silver water. When the seer motioned to me, I hesitated only a moment before pressing the dagger's edge across my skin. Warmth spilled, mingling with his. The surface of the basin rippled, flaring once with silver light, then settled into stillness. "Repeat after me," the seer whispered. "By the moon that made us, by the blood that binds us, I accept the weight of fate. Where one falls, the other follows. Where one rises, both are cursed." We spoke together. Our voices merged, low and certain. When the final word left our tongues, the mark on my neck ignited. Pain lanced through me like fire and frost combined. The king staggered once, clutching his arm where his own mark burned. The seer lifted her face toward the ceiling. "It is done. The blood oath is sealed." Then the basin shattered. The water hissed out across the stones, vanishing before it touched our feet. That night the castle would not sleep. Every wolf in the fortress howled once and fell silent, sensing a change in the air. I sat by the narrow window of the tower room again, wrapping my bandaged hand. The skin beneath the cloth pulsed faintly with light. When the door opened, I knew it was him before I turned. He entered quietly, unarmed. The fire from the brazier painted gold across his armor. He said nothing for a long time. "The council demanded your death again," he said at last. "They fear what we have done." "And what do you fear, my king?" I asked before I could stop myself. He looked at me as if no one had spoken to him that way in years. "I fear I have already chosen wrong." I rose slowly. The words hung between us like smoke. "Then why seal the oath?" "Because prophecy leaves no mercy for hesitation." He stepped closer, studying the bandage at my wrist. His tone softened. "Does it burn still?" "Only when I think of it." "Then do not think of it." His attempt at command faltered halfway to kindness. I almost smiled, but didn't. Neither of us belonged to comfort anymore. He turned toward the window, staring at the moon. "The seer says the curse of the first Luna began with betrayal. That the bond of the marked mirrors that sin. If we break faith, the goddess reclaims our souls." So we're prisoners of each other now. No, he said quietly. We are mirrors. One cannot live if the other denies the truth. Silence stretched again. Then the tower bell rang thrice, a warning. A guard burst in, breathless. Sire! The northern sentries report movement. Rogue packs crossing the ridge. The king straightened. Sound the horns. Seal the gates. He turned to me. You'll remain here. If they breach the walls, the tower will hold. I'm not afraid of wolves, I said. No, he answered. But they are afraid of you. Before I could question that, he was gone. Outside, the horns cried through the fog. Steel clashed in the courtyard. From the window I saw shadows moving beyond the walls, figures that ran like beasts, half man, half feral, eyes gleaming red in the dark. The air thickened with the smell of blood and rain. Every howl answered another. Then pain struck again. My mark blazed. I doubled over, gasping. Through the agony I saw flashes not of my own sight but his. The battlefield, the roar of blades, the moment his sword met another's. Our blood bond had opened a window I could not close. I saw him fall to one knee, then rise again. His hand pressed to the wound that mirrored mine. Stop! I shouted into the night, though he could not hear. You'll die if you fight. The tower door crashed open. The seer stumbled in, her face pale as ash. Child, listen to me. The oath links your life to his. If his blood spills, yours will follow. You must steady the bond, or both will perish. How? She seized my injured hand and forced it against the stone floor. Her voice rose in a chant older than the language of men. The pain deepened, then steadied. Through the connection I felt him breathe again. His pulse returning strong. When the last echo faded, the seer collapsed. I caught her before she struck the ground. He fights for you now, she whispered. But remember, the bond gives life only once. Next time it will take. By dawn the battle was over. Smoke drifted through the valley. The rogue packs were scattered. The king returned blood-stained but unbroken. When he entered the tower, he looked older, shadows carved deeper beneath his eyes. He said nothing as he removed his gauntlets, then reached for the bowl of water on the table. I moved to help, but he caught my wrist. You shouldn't have interfered, he said softly. The seer told me what you did. You would have died. That was my duty. And mine is to survive, I replied. For the first time, his stern mask cracked into something like sorrow. He released my wrist and sat beside the window. You don't understand what this bond will demand. Then teach me, I said. He met my gaze, and the silence that followed said more than any prophecy. We were both condemned, two threads tied by a goddess neither of us trusted. Yet neither could look away. Outside, the first light broke through the clouds, touching the towers with pale gold. The seer's voice drifted from the corridor, faint but certain. The blood oath is complete. But the consequence has only begun. That morning, the king gathered his council. From my tower window I could see the banners raised again, their colors restored after the night's chaos. The realm would call it victory. But I knew better. I felt it beneath my skin, the mark's quiet pulse, warning that fate had merely paused to draw breath. For now the king lived. And as long as he lived, I could not die. I turned from the window, whispering into the still air. If destiny listens, then let it hear me. I did not choose this path. But I will walk it until it breaks. The bells tolled again. 3 times, slow and mournful. Not for war this time, for judgment. The moon had waned to a thin sickle above the citadel, throwing pale light across the courtyard where I had once knelt for execution. A fortnight had passed since the blood oath. The kingdom whispered that the king had won a miracle. I knew better. Miracles never came without cost. The mark on my neck had darkened, its light fading to gray. The seer said that meant the prophecy neared completion. When the mark dims, the moon collects its due. That morning the council demanded an answer. Would the king surrender the girl to the goddess's altar, or would he risk the kingdom's ruin? He summoned me to the Hall of Judgment at dusk. The torches flared blue as I entered. He stood at the far end, alone, his crown lying forgotten on the steps below his throne. "You knew this day would come," he said. "I hoped it wouldn't." He studied me quietly. The fatigue in his eyes was deeper than any wound. "The seer believes there is one way to break the chain, if one of us willingly gives blood at the altar before the moon's rise. The curse demands a life, not both. Then let it be mine." He shook his head once. "The curse was born of my line. It ends with me." "That isn't what fate wants," I said. "It wants balance. If you die, the kingdom dies with you. If I die, the balance holds. And you call that mercy?" Silence. The word mercy meant nothing now. Outside, thunder rolled. The goddess was listening. We climbed the northern stairs together as stormlight flickered through the windows. The seer followed behind, chanting in the old tongue. At the top of the keep lay the open court of the moon, a ring of pillars older than the castle itself, their surfaces carved with runes that shimmered when lightning touched them. The king set his sword across the altar stone. Rain began to fall, cold and clean. "Once the blood touches the stone," the seer warned, "the moon's will cannot be undone. One soul will pass. The other will bear its echo forever." He reached for the dagger, the same obsidian blade we had used for the oath. His hand trembled, not from fear but from resolve. I stepped forward. "Let me." "No," he said. "You have carried the burden long enough." He lifted the dagger, poised to cut his palm again, but before the blade met flesh the mark on his arm flared violently. I felt the burn echo through my neck, a pulse of warning. The ground beneath us shuddered. "She rejects your sacrifice," the seer cried. "Only the marked may offer it willingly." I seized the dagger from his grasp. Our blood bond surged between us like fire and ice. "If she rejects you, then she will have me," I said. He caught my wrist, desperate. "If you die, I die. Not if you release me first." His breath faltered. He understood what I meant. To sever the bond, one must renounce it by name. It would tear his soul in half, but it would free him. "Say it," I whispered. "End the curse." "I cannot." "You must." The storm raged harder. The pillars blazed with white light. The seer shouted over the wind, her words nearly drowned. "The choice must be made before the moon clears the clouds. Choose, my king." He looked at me, then really looked. The warlord's mask was gone. What remained was simply a man who had carried too much fate for one lifetime. He stepped closer until I could see the reflection of lightning in his eyes. "Then forgive me," he said, voice breaking. "For what?" "For obeying the goddess." Before I could speak, he drew the blade across his palm and pressed it to my neck. The blood mingled where the marks met. Pain flared, a brilliance so fierce I thought the world had ended. I heard the seer cry out. The storm went silent. The light swallowed everything. When I opened my eyes, there was no sky, no ground, only a white expanse that stretched into forever. The air smelled of moonlight and dust. A voice spoke, soft and endless. "Child of the mortal line, why do you struggle against the weave? Because the weave kills the innocent. Innocence is a seed that grows only in shadow." The figure before me took shape, tall, faceless, robed in silver flame. "The moon goddess." "You marked us both," I said. "Why?" "To remind the strong that power is borrowed, and the weak that destiny listens. One heart must always bear the pain so the rest may live." "Then take mine." She raised her hand. Light lanced through my chest. I fell without falling. Somewhere far away, I heard the king's voice call my name, and then everything dissolved into silence. The world returned as if drawn from ashes. I woke in the tower room again, wrapped in linen. The wound at my neck had faded to a pale scar. The seer sat beside the bed, eyes closed in prayer. "He lives," I whispered. She nodded slowly. "The bond broke. The goddess accepted your offering. The curse is ended." "And the king?" He bears the mark still, but it no longer burns. His life is his own again because you gave yours away. But I'm alive. Partly, she said. You belong to the border now, half in shadow, half in light. The price of balance. She left me to the quiet. Outside, the bells rang for sunrise. The sky was clear for the first time in weeks. I rose and walked to the window. In the courtyard below, the king stood beside the soldiers, crown in hand. When he looked up, our eyes met. He bowed once, not as a ruler but as one soul to another. I touched the faint scar on my neck. No longer hurt. It simply reminded me that fate, for all its cruelty, could still be answered with choice. They say the king rebuilt the northern wall himself before the next winter. They say the kingdom prospered. They never speak of the girl who once stood condemned before his throne. Legends prefer endings that sound like triumph. But I know the truth. The goddess writes in circles, not lines. Someday the mark will return, and another will stand where I once stood, torn between duty and mercy. If anyone hears my story, let them remember this. Fate cannot be escaped, but it can be met with open eyes. And to those who have listened till now, my voice reaching across time and shadow, tell me the city you're watching from so I can send you